Okay, so you want to own a self-storage facility. You drive past one on the highway, maybe on a Tuesday afternoon when traffic is crawling, and you've got nothing to do but stare out the window. You see this long, flat, ugly building with orange or yellow doors, a chain link fence, maybe a single guy in a little booth at the entrance, and you think, that's it, that's the whole operation. You're not cooking anything. You're not staffing a kitchen. You're not managing inventory that spoils. You just rent people a box. They fill it with their stuff. They pay you every month, and you repeat that process a few hundred times. No employees to babysit, no products to source, no competition from Amazon. Just concrete, metal doors, and passive income trickling into your bank account while you sleep. The business looks almost offensively simple from the outside. Here's the problem. The gap between what this business looks like from a car window and what it actually costs to build, fill, and sustain, that gap is where most first-time self-storage investors quietly go broke. The economics of this industry are not complicated, but they are deeply counterintuitive. And the part that looks the most passive is usually the part that's burning the most cash underneath the surface. So you dig in, you start researching, you pull up industry reports, and you see numbers that make your pulse quicken. Self-storage is a $44 billion industry in the United States. There are over 50,000 facilities across the country. About 1 in 10 American households rents a storage unit at some point. The average unit rents for somewhere between $80 and $300 per month, depending on size and location. The industry survived the 2008 financial crisis better than almost any other real estate sector. It survived COVID. It actually grew during COVID because people were moving, downsizing, decluttering, dying, divorcing. Every major life disruption sends people to a storage facility, and life in America has not been short on disruptions. You read all of this and you think, I need to own one of these things. So let's actually walk through what owning one means. You don't start by buying a facility. You start by understanding why the land itself is the single most important decision you will ever make in this business, and why that decision is almost entirely out of your control. Self-storage is a hyper-local business. Not regional, not citywide. Hyper-local. A facility on the east side of town and a facility 3 miles away on the west side can have completely different economics, different occupancy rates, different pricing power, and different long-term trajectories, even if they look identical from the outside. The reason is drive time. People don't want to drive more than 10 or 15 minutes to their storage unit. They want it close enough that grabbing something from it doesn't eat their Saturday morning. So when you're evaluating a location, you're not thinking about the city. You're thinking about a radius. You're drawing a circle on a map, maybe 3 to 5 miles wide, and you're asking, how many households are inside this circle? How much disposable income do they have? How many competing facilities already exist in this circle? And is there anything on the horizon? A new apartment complex, a commercial development, a highway expansion? That's going to either flood this circle with new customers or drop a new competitor in your lap. That research takes months. Serious operators will spend $50,000 to $100,000 on feasibility studies, demographic reports, and traffic analysis before they ever break ground. And after all of that, they can still be wrong. Now say you find the land, good land, dense suburban neighborhood, strong median household income, relatively low competition within your target radius. You buy it or you lease it under a long-term ground lease arrangement. Now you need to build a standard self-storage facility. Nothing fancy, no climate control. Just a basic drive-up single-story structure. Costs somewhere between $25 and $45 per square foot to construct. That number has moved around a lot since supply chain disruptions hit the construction industry. A 50,000 square foot facility, which is a fairly modest operation, costs somewhere in the range of $1.5 million to $2.5 million just to build. Add land acquisition costs, which in a suburban market with good demographics might run you another $500,000 to $2 million. Add soft costs, architects, permits, environmental studies, legal fees, utility hookups. You are now looking at a total development cost of $3 million to $6 million for a mid-sized facility before you've rented a single unit, climate-controlled facilities, which is the direction the market has been moving for the past decade. Costs significantly more to build. You're running HVAC through every corridor. You're insulating walls. You're managing humidity levels. Climate-controlled units rent for more. Sometimes 30 to 50% more than standard units. But the construction premium is real, and the operating costs are permanently higher because you're running climate systems 365 days a year, regardless of occupancy. And here's the number that most people completely miss when they first look at this business. The stabilized occupancy rate. That's the occupancy rate at which a facility's income comfortably exceeds its expenses and debt service. For most self-storage facilities, that number is around 85 to 90%. Below that, you're likely losing money or breaking even at best. The problem is that a brand new facility doesn't open at 85%. It opens at zero. And it takes time, often 18 to 36 months, to lease up to a stabilized occupancy. During that entire period, you're servicing debt on a $4 million project, while your revenue is a fraction of what you need. That lease-up period is the killing ground for undercapitalized operators. You can build the right facility in the right location with the right unit mix and still run out of cash before you ever get to profitability. This is why every serious self-storage developer talks obsessively about runway. How many months of operating expenses plus debt service can you cover from reserves if lease-up takes longer than projected? The industry standard answer is at least 24 months. Less than that, and a slow start can turn into a catastrophe fast. So you get through lease-up, you're at 88% occupancy. Your facility is generating real revenue. Now, you start to understand the actual operating economics. The revenue side is more dynamic than most people expect. Self-storage is not a static, set-it-and-forget-it pricing model. The sophisticated operators, and increasingly even the mid-sized regional players, use revenue management software that adjusts unit prices in real time based on supply and demand signals. When occupancy in a particular unit size ticks above a threshold, the software automatically bumps the street rate. When you've got a glut of 10 by 10 units sitting empty, it drops the price or creates a first month free promotion to get bodies in. REITs like Public Storage, Extra Space Storage, and CubeSmart have been running sophisticated yield management systems for years. If you're trying to compete as an independent operator using static annual pricing, you're bringing a flip phone to a smartphone fight. The other thing that makes self-storage revenue interesting is the concept of existing tenant rate increases. This is something that sounds almost aggressive when you first hear it, but it's completely standard in the industry, and it has massive implications for your long-term economics. Existing tenants, people who've been renting with you for 6 months or a year, receive periodic rate increase letters. Sometimes these increases are modest, 5 to 10%. Sometimes they're larger. And here's the thing. Most tenants don't leave. They don't leave because moving out of a storage unit is genuinely painful. You have to rent a truck. You have to find somewhere else to put your stuff. You have to spend a weekend doing physical labor. For most tenants, the psychological and logistical cost of moving out is worth more than the $15 or $20 a month they're being asked to pay extra. This dynamic, what operators sometimes call the stickiness of self-storage tenants, is one of the reasons the business generates the margins it does. You are monetizing human inertia, and human inertia is remarkably reliable. On the expense side, the cost structure of a self-storage facility is genuinely lean compared to most real estate businesses. There's no tenant build-out, no leasing commissions, no landlord improvements. You're not replacing appliances or repainting walls every time a unit turns over. The main recurring operating costs are property taxes, insurance, utilities, payroll, and marketing. Payroll is smaller than you'd expect because self-storage has almost fully automated its front-end operations. Most facilities today use web-based reservation systems, electronic gate access, and online lease signing. You can run a 500-unit facility with a single full-time manager and a part-time employee. Some of the larger REITs are experimenting with fully unmanned facilities where everything happens through an app and a customer service phone line. The labor efficiency here is extraordinary. A retail business generating similar revenue would need 15 to 20 employees. You need 2, maybe 3. Marketing costs have become the expense line that surprises most new operators. You might think self-storage is low marketing business. People who need storage will find you, right? The problem is that the two platforms people use to find storage units, Google and the self-storage aggregator sites like Sparefoot and Storage.com, are extraordinarily competitive and expensive. When someone types storage units near me into Google, they are exactly the kind of high-intent customer that every self-storage facility within 10 miles is trying to capture. That cost per click is not cheap, and the aggregator platforms take a cut of first-month rent or charge per lead. An independent operator competing against a national REIT that has a dominant SEO presence and an established Google review profile is fighting a genuinely difficult battle for digital visibility. Your marketing budget is not optional, it's structural. Property taxes deserve a specific mention because they are the hidden volatility in the self-storage business. When you develop a piece of land and build a revenue-generating facility on it, the local tax assessor reassesses that parcel based on its income-producing value. Your property taxes can jump dramatically after your first full year of operations, sometimes doubling or tripling compared to the taxes you paid on the raw land. In some states, properties are routinely reassessed on a cycle, so your tax liability is always somewhat uncertain. Smart operators model in aggressive property tax assumptions from day one, not because they're pessimistic, but because an unexpected tax increase on a facility running thin margins is exactly the kind of thing that turns a good investment into a nightmare. Now let's talk about the competitive landscape, because this is the single biggest structural risk in self-storage right now, and most people walking into this business dramatically underestimate it. Self-storage development is what economists call low barriers to entry. The building itself is not technologically complex. The business model is not mysterious. And when an asset class performs well for a sustained period, as self-storage has, capital floods in. Between 2015 and 2022, self-storage development activity accelerated dramatically. New supply was added to markets across the country, often in clusters, because every developer was using the same demographic analysis tools and arriving at the same underserved market conclusions simultaneously. What this means for you as an operator is that the facility you open today may face zero new competition for 3 years, or it may face a brand new 800-unit facility, opening 6 blocks away in year 2 of your lease-up, right when you're most financially vulnerable. You can do all the right research and still get blindsided by a competitor who started permitting their project before yours was even a gleam in your eye. The national REITs are the 800-pound gorillas in this landscape. Public Storage alone operates over 2,200 facilities in the U.S. Extra Space Storage, which merged with Life Storage in 2023 to create the largest self-storage operator in the country. It has an enormous national footprint. These companies have brand recognition, economies of scale in purchasing and insurance, massive marketing budgets, and the ability to absorb a price war in a local market that would bankrupt an independent. If a REIT builds a facility near yours and decides to run aggressive promotions to capture market share during your lease-up, your financial model breaks, full stop. The response from successful independent operators is not to compete with the REITs on price. That's a losing strategy. It's to compete on service, niche positioning, and community relationships in ways that large institutional operators structurally cannot. The local operator who knows every tenant by name, who calls you back within an hour, who lets you know when your unit lock looks wrong. That operator retains customers at a rate the algorithm-managed REIT location cannot match. This is a real competitive advantage, but it requires active management and genuine hospitality, which means the fantasy of this business as a passive income machine starts to dissolve the moment you take it seriously. The third-party management model has emerged as an important middle path for small investors who want exposure to self-storage economics without the intensity of owner-operator management. Under this model, you own the facility, but you hire a professional self-storage management company to handle day-to-day operations: marketing, customer service, rent collection, maintenance, pricing. These management companies typically charge 6 to 8% of gross revenue. The trade-off is real. You give up margin, but you also give up headaches. The question is whether you trust someone else's incentives to be aligned with yours in the moments that matter. There's another path that's become increasingly popular for retail investors who want self-storage exposure without developing or buying a facility outright: self-storage REITs. When you buy shares of Public Storage or Extra Space Storage or National Storage Affiliates Trust, you're essentially buying a fractional share of a massive portfolio of storage facilities across the country. You get the income, the diversification, and the liquidity. You don't get the control, the leverage, or the tax benefits of direct ownership. But you also don't get the $4 million development risk, the 3-year lease-up sweats, or the call at 11 p.m. about a broken gate lock. The direct ownership math, when it works, is compelling. A well-located, well-managed 500-unit facility, generating $400,000 in gross revenue with $150,000 in operating expenses, produces roughly $250,000 in net operating income before debt service. at a 6% cap rate, which is a reasonable market cap rate for a stabilized self-storage facility in a decent market. That NOI supports an asset value of approximately $4.2 million. If you develop the facility for $3.5 million, you have built $700,000 in equity through development and operations. You can refinance, pull that equity out, and deploy it toward your next facility. This is the loop that serious self-storage developers run, and it's how regional portfolios get built. The tax treatment of real estate ownership stacks on top of this in ways that are genuinely advantageous. Depreciation on a self-storage facility. The paper loss you record annually on the building's value can offset your taxable income significantly even in years when the facility is generating strong cash flow. Cost segregation studies allow you to accelerate depreciation on certain components of the facility, potentially generating large paper losses in the early years that shelter income from other sources. This is not a loophole. It's exactly how the tax code is designed to incentivize real estate development. But it's also meaningfully complex and requires a CPA who understands real estate taxation to execute correctly. The deal that makes this business dangerous is the deal that looks safe. You find an existing facility. Someone's been running it for 20 years. It's at 92% occupancy. The owner is tired, the price is reasonable, and everything looks clean on the surface. You buy it. And 6 months in, you discover that the owner has been charging below market rents for a decade because he knew his tenants personally and felt uncomfortable raising prices on them. The facility looks operationally strong, but the revenue is suppressed. You have upside. You can raise rents to market, but that process takes time, creates churn, and requires the kind of rent increase communication that feels uncomfortable to execute on real people who've been storing their stuff there since their kids were in diapers. You also discover that the roof on Building C is original, 22 years old, and the local contractor says it'll need full replacement within 18 months. That's $180,000. You didn't see in the seller's financials because it wasn't in the financials. It was in the parking lot gravel and the faded paint and the slow drip stain on the ceiling of Unit 147 that the previous owner had been monitoring and praying about for 3 years. Buying an existing facility requires the same forensic due diligence as buying any other commercial real estate. You dig into the rent roll and verify every unit. You check the lease dates and unit sizes against actual field measurements. You pull permits and verify that every structure on the property was built legally. You hire a property condition assessment firm to crawl every corner of every building. You check for environmental issues on the land. Self-storage facilities are sometimes built on formerly industrial parcels, and a Phase 1 environmental assessment that comes back with a red flag can blow up your entire acquisition. The financing landscape for self-storage has matured significantly as institutional capital has recognized the sector. Conventional commercial real estate lenders, SBA 504 and SBA 7A programs, CMBS lenders, and specialized self-storage lenders all participate in this market. SBA financing is particularly important for first-time buyers because it allows lower down payments, sometimes as little as 10% on an existing facility acquisition, which means you can control more asset value with less equity. The trade-off is that SBA loans come with owner occupancy requirements, meaning you generally need to be actively involved in management, and they carry prepayment penalties that can limit your exit flexibility. The underwriting on a self-storage acquisition is straightforward in theory. You take the trailing 12-month revenue, subtract operating expenses, arrive at NOI, apply a cap rate, and get to a value. In practice, the arguments happen in the details. What's the correct market cap rate? What expenses is the seller smoothing over? How do you underwrite the management cost if the current owner is self-managing and not showing a management fee as an expense? How do you account for deferred maintenance that's going to hit in years 1 through 3? Every line in that pro forma is a negotiation. And the difference between the seller's model and your model is usually where the real price discovery happens. What you're really doing when you buy or build a self-storage facility is making a long-term bet on 2 things: the demographic stability of the surrounding area, and your ability to manage the asset more efficiently and thoughtfully than the person who owned it before you. Neither of those bets pays off in a year or 2. The self-storage investors who build real wealth in this business do it over decades. Accumulating facilities, refinancing against appreciated equity, reinvesting cash flow, and gradually building portfolios that generate the kind of income that makes the initial development grind look in retrospect like the best decision they ever made. But that view from the highway, the flat building, the orange doors, the bored guy in the booth, that view is lying to you. It's showing you the surface of a business that requires real capital, real knowledge, real patience, and real tolerance for the years. When nothing is working, the way you projected and the road from your development cost to your exit cap rate looks longer than you ever anticipated when you first started drawing circles on a map. The business rewards the people who understand it before they enter it and quietly punishes everyone else. That's not a warning to stay away. Self-storage is genuinely one of the most durable and defensible real estate businesses in the American economy. The structural demand, driven by housing transitions, life disruptions, small businesses needing overflow space, and the simple fact that Americans own more stuff than they have room for, isn't going away. The operating leverage, once you hit stabilized occupancy, is real. The tax advantages of real estate ownership compound over time in ways that make the after-tax return profile very attractive. And unlike retail or office, you're not lying awake at night, worried about your tenant's business models. Because your tenant isn't running a business in your unit. They're just storing their grandmother's furniture and their college snowboard. But you don't get any of that upside by driving past a storage facility and deciding it looks easy. You get it by spending 6 months understanding the feasibility economics before you sign a purchase agreement. By building a financial model that stress tests your lease-up assumptions at 50% of what you expect. By hiring operators and advisors who've actually run these facilities and can tell you where the bodies are buried. By treating the first facility not as a retirement plan, but as a graduate education. The most expensive thing you will ever learn, and the most valuable if you pay attention. The orange doors aren't a shortcut to passive income. They're the entrance to a real business that rewards the people who take it seriously with something most businesses never deliver. An asset that quietly grows in value while the world around it changes. An income stream that tends to hold up when everything else is falling apart. And a foothold in an industry that has rewarded patient, informed capital for decades, and almost certainly will keep doing so. That's what's behind the orange door. If this is the kind of financial deep dive that changes the way you think about money, business, and the hidden economics underneath the things you drive past every day, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.